So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Greg Reeves and I'm the Commercial Director here at Connections, and we are so glad you made it. Thank you very much for joining us. So today is a special day. Not only is it World Tourism Day, it's actually the warmest and most dry day in the UK on record for September. So we're very fortunate. We're very glad. But in all seriousness, we do know that there is a bit of a breeze downstairs. It could be a bit chilly, and we're taking steps just to make that a little bit more comfortable. So thank you for bearing with us there. So for those of you who are new to the Connections Way, when you choose an experience, you do see the tables that are dotted around, but you'll see some of our colleagues that also have paddle signs. So when you start your meeting with the buyer and supplier, do look out for those and head over, and you'll be escorted up to some other experiences, because I don't know if you knew, but on level 2, we have a taste of Israel, and we also have South African drumming, which obviously had to be on level 2 because they're making a right racket up there. But do give it a try. So I've seen people engaging in experiences, which is great. Please do make the most of them. Just warming up, get into it, give them a try. What I'd like to do is just have a bit of insight on someone's experience this morning. And I do have some pre-selected names, but I would rather pick on someone. So if anyone can tell me maybe an experience they've had this morning that they've enjoyed, or an interaction that they've had which has been fun, would you care to join? We have a mic.
I had Hungarian wine for breakfast.
Oh, great.
I had Hungarian wine for breakfast. And everyone else is invited, so hope to see you there.
That's interesting, because we thought about Hungarian wine in the morning. We thought, oh, maybe people won't engage in that. We realized it's been 2 years. It's been 2 years since we last saw each other. Another one?
I enjoyed the cow stacking experience at the Switzerland tourism stall.
What's that, cow?
The cow stacking.
Cow stacking, fantastic. How many did you do?
We finished it without any cow
You completed
falling down.
it. The game that can't be completed.
On one try.
Fantastic. We have time for one more if anyone else wants to. Oh, over here. Oh, I've got 2.
2? Where? Where was the other one over here?
I just had the tapas experience from Catalunya, and that was amazing. So learning how to prepare tapas, really wonderful, really good. Enjoyed it.
Fantastic.
We enjoyed Irish dancing. It was brilliant.
Wow. I'm impressed. I was really hoping someone would come up with that, and I didn't know if anyone had dived in yet. So maybe after the Hungarian wine, we'll have more Irish dancing.
My meeting supplier, he won the award.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. So there's plenty more time to engage in those experiences. Please do make the most of them and come back to us with some stories to tell. So now we're about to hear about a very interesting debate chaired by Travel Weekly Executive Editor Ian Taylor. The market-leading multimedia brand for the UK travel industry, Travel Weekly, brought together a panel of experts to discuss the factors that will influence how destinations and industry partners evolve and thrive beyond recovery. So speakers joining Ian Taylor for this unmissable discussion include Flavio Zappacosta, Head of UK and Ireland at the Italian Tourist Board and our country partner. A little fact about Flavio, which I'll try and remember. His mother is Hungarian, his father's Italian, and you're married to a Brazilian. So when you go through an airport, they think you're a spy with your 3 passports. Tom Jenkins, Chief Executive of the European Tourism Association, ETOA. In Tom's spare time, he likes a good grumble, which is a quintessentially British pastime. We've got Susan Deere, who's the Director of Industry Relations at Travel Association ABTA. Susan grew up in South Africa, so she asked me to say that now so you don't spend the whole panel discussion wondering where that accent's from instead of listening to the panel. And then finally, we've got Tine Murn, co-founder of New Deal Europe, who, despite being Slovenian through and through, is constantly confused as a Dane. And Tine works with the 12 countries of the Balkans, amongst others. So that's it. We're very privileged. And with that, I'll pass over to Ian Taylor. Thank you, Ian.
So, welcome, everybody. The UK government thoughtfully relaxed its restrictions on inbound and outbound travel for this event. Not before time. So, Tom, if I can start with you.
Right.
We've seen quite a relaxation. I'm assuming that's had a positive impact on inbound tourism, but there are still some challenges, aren't there? So how has the restart been, and what challenges do you still see?
Well, I mean, the restart is welcome, insofar as we're no longer being waterboarded, so you tend to be very grateful to the person torturing you that they've stopped. But I think, in all honesty, there are still considerable obstacles to people coming here. I mean, they still have to have a test. And this is not cheap, and it's not straightforward. It's like, it's the equivalent of requiring a visa to come to the UK in terms of the obstacle incoming visitors face. So we're not seeing the UK, if you're worried about the UK, flying off the shelves at the moment. In Europe, in terms of incoming visitors to Europe, and you'll be hearing more from our Italian colleague here, we are seeing a recovery, particularly in the North American market, going into Europe, but it's a recovery. It's not a restoration. I think my members who sell Europe in North America will have seen maybe 25-30% of what they would expect to see in a normal year in August, September. They will have seen roughly 1 or 2% of what they would expect to see in the UK. So there is a recovery of sorts, but it's mainly shaped around Europe at the moment.
Okay, and are your members all going to make it through till next spring?
What an interesting question. Ask me next spring.
Okay, maybe we'll come back to that. Susan, there's been a restart for the outbound sector, but again, there are still challenges. How would you characterise the situation now?
Yeah, I think there are still framework challenges that I would say. So things like, we still have a huge red list, a lot of which is long-haul destinations, which is obviously a significant challenge for those specialists in those areas. I know Foreign Office advice, we can speak about that. There's obviously some discrepancy between what the Foreign Office is advising. So there are some destinations which may be coming off the red list, but there is still advice against non-essential travel there. Other things, testing, Tom mentioned. I mean, when are the lateral flow tests going to be accepted instead of PCR tests? End of October is very vague. Will it be in time for October half term? And then I think, apart from, there's many more, but apart from those framework challenges, we're still on the ground seeing the operational challenges where, if customers do fall ill in destination, it's then the operational teams on the ground that have to find out what the processes are in that particular destination, because obviously each health ministry has their own rules and regulations about people falling ill. So I think still a significant amount of work to do on the framework, but we shouldn't also underestimate the work that operators are doing on the ground dealing with those operational challenges.
Okay, let me ask the pair of you a couple of specific things to the UK, and then I'll come to Flavio and Tine, if that's okay. So just on will the PCR test requirement be removed for vaccinated passengers in time for the school half term? Will it or not? What do you think?
All the announcements have said that that is the intention, so I certainly hope so.
Yeah, Tom?
I would assume so. I mean, all the discussions about relaxation are based around a recognition of the importance to the Conservative Party of voters being able to travel at half term. So there is no reciprocal recognition of inbound travel, I hasten to add. But I think we're probably right to assume that they will do so. Whether that assumption is wise is an open question.
And there was a story at the weekend, Tom, about the government possibly looking to follow Ireland and removing the requirement for hotel quarantine for red list countries. Do you think that's a real story or not?
Are you asking me to guess what's going on in the minds of government at the moment?
Well, my feeling is that it's probably wrong, that it's probably not the case.
Well, I mean, I think we could ask everybody in the room to toss a coin, and we'll see what they come up with. I think, frankly, it's a ridiculous imposition on people to do this, and I think they will drop it. But your guess is as good as mine is not a cliche at this moment.
Okay. Susan, what do you think?
Yeah, it's similar. Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, my instinct, based on how things have been moving slower than perhaps the industry has wanted it to, suggests that it will not be taking place in this particular changeover in October. But my capacity for surprise has been much diminished over the last couple of years by announcements, so yeah.
Okay. I can't see why you'd keep 54 countries on the red list and then change the restrictions a week later, but still. Susan, on the FCDO advice, okay, there's all kinds of examples like the Maldives where the FCDO, the Foreign Office says you can't travel, but you know the Department for Transport says you can. Surely there's always going to be a discrepancy between what the Foreign Office says. And, you know, because one is about the risk to the traveller in the destination, as perceived by the Foreign Office, and the other is about the public health risk here. So there will be a difference, inevitably.
And we've been very clear on that throughout, that they are two very different assessments. But I think, and apologies to those of you who've heard me wittering on over the last 18 months, I think the issue here is transparency. So, you know, the criteria, we had the JBC criteria, the Joint Biosecurity Centre criteria, but very vague, very broad brush for the DFT traffic light system. And then the Foreign Office, we do know that they have other criteria which come into play. So, for example, you know, the ability of the hospital capacity within the destination to cope with that. So, absolutely, there could be situations where the risk on the inbound is considered lower, perhaps because there's no variance or whatever, the Joint Biosecurity Centre thing. But there is still a risk in destination, which the Foreign Office consider to be the case. But I think, again, and, you know, apologies again for being repetitive, but it's the unacceptably high risk. That is what is supposed to be in place. And I question whether, at the moment, we've got over 100 countries which have travel advice against leisure travel. I think the time has come to do a more strategic review of how those risk assessments underpinning the Foreign Office advice are working.
Okay, and you and ABTA are working with the Foreign Office to try and get that revised?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, one final question on this, and apologies for taking up the first few moments of the discussion about the UK, but unfortunately that's where we are. Tom, there was another story at the weekend suggesting that the UK and EU are about to do some sort of deal to recognise the NHS COVID vaccination certificate, the COVID pass. I think the Daily Telegraph suggested that it would involve the UK joining the EU system. But given Brexit, that seems impossible to imagine with the Tory right. So is there truth to that? Do you see that being accepted?
You qualified your statement right at the end with the qualifying clause. It does not mean that the UK will be joining the EU.
Yeah.
It means that they might join the EU system of mutual recognition. Yeah. If they do so, it would be a welcome dawn of sense in this area. I have no, again, we're clutching at straws that are floating in the media here. And until you hear something concrete that you know is right. And look, they can U-turn within a week on HGV visas. Things can change almost overnight. So we hope that's going to happen. No, it doesn't make logistical sense from an ideological point of view, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. And I think it should happen. So that's all we can do is pin our faith on it. But Flavio has got...
Yeah, because in Italy it's already recognized. I mean, since the 1st of August, tested by myself last month, it does work. I mean, the NHS up in Italy becomes the green pass, as they call it in Italy, so they let you in everywhere with the NHS pass, as long as you are double jabbed, of course, and so it is already recognized, in Italy at least, so I don't see why they shouldn't, the whole EU.
Yeah, well, it's recognised by a lot of EU countries, isn't it? It's recognised by Spain, but not by Portugal, for instance, and so on. It's confusing. I want to come to Italy in 1 second, but can I just ask the audience, how many of you have travelled to the UK recently, or maybe for this event or for something else? Just hands up. How many are from? Yeah, and of those, how many of you faced the big queues at the border to come in? Yeah, almost everybody who's come in. That's not. And presumably, was that in the last few days? Because I've come through Heathrow twice in the last fortnight and faced no queues because the e-gates were working. But it depends whether you. Yeah. You've had. Yes, I think at the weekend there was a problem with the e-gates. And my suspicion is that was because they're trying to update the passenger locator form in order to get rid of the day 2 test requirement. But we'll see. I'm just speculating. Flavio, tell me, how has the summer been in Italy? Is everything open? Have people come back?
Everything is open. Yeah, we are getting. I mean, we are back to normality. There's really little restrictions. I mean, like the face mask indoor. I mean, this wouldn't happen in Italy. You have to wear a face mask all indoor places. And otherwise, there are some social distancing rules, but very few for really huge events. Otherwise, it's really back to normal. It's also very safe because, as I told you, in Italy, you need this green pass, it's called. It's basically the proof that you've been double vaccinated. And to enter virtually every indoor space in Italy, you need this green pass, which the NHS is totally valid in Italy, so there's no problem. So it's very safe, and everything is getting back to normal, yeah, almost. And what I would recommend, the only thing is probably like not the pass. I mean, I have to book in advance, for example, museums, so you want to go to a theater or an opera, book in advance because there might be some social distancing restrictions, so not to find it all booked up. So I just recommend that. Otherwise, it's really back to normal, almost.
And everything is open, restaurants?
Everything is open, restaurants are open. You can eat inside the restaurant only with this green pass. So otherwise, outside, everybody can eat. So everything is really open, back to normal, yeah.
And what's the occupancy been like in the hotels? And are hotels in Italy suffering from the kind of staff shortages?
It's a mixed. I mean, if you see the seaside resorts or mountains, I mean, outside the cities, not too bad. I mean, the summer was quite good, especially because the lack of international was balanced by the domestic travel, so the Italians didn't go abroad, and we had, as Tom mentioned, not an invasion, but a recovery of North Americans, and especially Germans and French. UK, British, not so much, unfortunately. That's because we still had the quarantine in place until the 30th of August for arrivals from the UK, so that, of course, put off a lot of British tourists. Now it's open, but so the summer, there is a sort of recovery, yes. It's been better than last year, which wasn't difficult. We are far away from 2019 still, of course, but we hope to get back to normal, not next year yet, but 2023, what I'm reading, I mean, I'm not cheating, it's just I don't want to give false numbers. In 2023, we are expecting to increase plus 3% on 2019 figures. So 2023 should be the total recovery.
And
next year is still a transitional, year.
And have you seen an impact on destinations that were particularly popular with UK visitors?
Yeah, what struggles most are the big cities, definitely. Yeah. The city breaks, Rome, Florence, Venice, Naples, Milan. The big city, where in Italy the big hotels are mostly, 2/3 of big hotels are concentrated in big cities in Italy, and those are the ones who are struggling most. So now what we are hoping to get the British, that mostly British people, 70% of British tourists, they prefer to go to city breaks, arts, rather than beaches. So hopefully now with autumn, this is the period for city breaks. We can have a recovery for the UK market as well.
Okay, so
towards Italy.
And how are bookings then looking for the winter in that case?
They are now, especially from Britain. I mean, after they've been lifted the restriction in August, they went up. I mean, we in contact with Skyscanner as well with Google searches. We had some statistics. They are up 80%. The researchers about Italy from Britain immediately after the restrictions were lifted. So we are very hopeful. We are pushing not only the city break but also the winter destinations because those suffered a lot. This would be the third year, so we really need to help those destinations, the winter skiing, but not only. I mean, the winter sports. And yes, this is what we will be doing now, promoting these parts of Italy, especially.
Okay. Obviously, the lack of UK visitors has had an impact on cities, but is it partly also to do with the fact that there's a reluctance amongst some people to visit cities because of COVID?
It could be one reason could be that perhaps at the beginning of the pandemic, maybe last year, now we are fortunately or unfortunately getting used to live with this pandemic, and so people now are less put off by even a test. I mean, we have to travel. Like the liquids for 10 years ago, we got used to it, and hopefully I see this less of a problem now because also, especially as I told you, having this green pass is really a security, a guarantee that, not a guarantee 100%, but almost that you get into an indoor place and you are safe. You are safe not to catch anything really, because everybody supposedly has been vaccinated or had a test.
Okay. Okay, very good. Tine, can I come to you? Sure. You're here to talk about the Balkans, but of course that's a big area with very wide differences between places. So give us a snapshot really of where things are going well perhaps and where things are not going so well.
Well, when we talk about Balkans, perhaps the new Deal Europe sort of family of countries, we start with Slovenia, where I'm from, and we go all the way down to the Greece islands, which technically not Balkans, but Greece mainland is, and up to Moldova. So there's altogether 12 countries, or economies, if you want to call them like this. I mean, there are big differences between them, especially because half of them, or a bit less than half of them, are in European Union, and B, because it's just they've taken approach to the vaccination and how to deal with it in a very different manner. I mean, some of the countries were very relaxed about it. For example, I just came back from a big trip to the Balkans, and like crossing the border to Albania and places like this had no problems, and I felt very relaxed. When in some other countries they were more strict about it, for example, Croatia or Slovenia. I think they've dealt pretty much okay in general, some of them better, some of them worse, but we all know that we shine somebody as a good example and 2 weeks later it's on the worst red list. So it's very difficult to say who is doing well, who is doing not well. So I mean, I have talking about the UK, I have a UK vaccination certificate, and I have a problem, for example, when I enter from Slovenia to Croatia, and they said, oh no, we don't recognize this, I will only stamp you a 12-hour transport thing. So that was a big surprise, but in fact it wasn't true, because I went to another border crossing and said, no, that's not true. So I think it's a lot of anxiety going along. Travelers, like even those who, like me, are avid travelers before, you don't know exactly what are you facing, what you're going to face, however. But I think what is in the nature of the region of the Balkans is always to do things a bit more, I don't know, anecdotically. So it's always a way through. So they managed to have a very decent, if not good, summer season, most of them. For example, Croatian partners or Albanian partners are reporting best than 2019. But then you have to know exactly why. I mean, they are reporting this in late July and August months, which goes down to the fact that a lot of them were told, come back by the end of August, come back a week or two before the school starts. So a lot of people would just rush their holidays in those peak months, which probably weren't their choice before. And there's a lot of travelers, you have to know, who never actually took holiday in their own countries, and they are taking the holidays in their own country now. And also the big markets, like the European markets, people who would probably travel before to Caribbean or overseas, they decided to say, oh, let's see what Greece has to offer, or Albania even, or Croatia, or Montenegro, Slovenia, whoever. So there's a lot of combination of the factors that basically led to this excess of occupation in holidays, in hotels and everything during these months. Also, quite a few of those countries, for example, Slovenia, I can tell you from Slovenian perspective, supported the homestaying with coupons or vouchers. So every citizen, everybody who paid tax in Slovenia would have a right to have this voucher to be used against staying in the country, which had positive effect to some regions, for example, to the very kind of countryside regions, but affected very negatively on capital, Ljubljana, which saw almost no tourism and which depends so much on foreign visitors or on MICE tourism, and that was basically on its knees completely and still is, and there is more to be needed. So I can only reflect what Flavio said before about these kind of discrepancies between what's happening in the cities and what's probably happening on the countryside. But on the other hand, this is probably a reality we're facing, and this is what we've been highlighting as a New Deal Europe destination, that there is a time now for this kind of maybe less traveled, less discovered areas to be put in the front as well. So the time is coming that we're gonna search for more exotic experiences, but closer to our home, and maybe not jumping around Europe or world in 1 week to all the places, just staying where you are.
Okay, but if the restrictions were not clear to you, and you specialize, you know the area and you specialize in it and so on, if it wasn't clear to you whether you could get into Croatia and Slovenia with your NHS pass, it's certainly not going to be clear to an ordinary traveller, is it? So why that would put people off, surely?
Well, the problem is that there is no one rule what is going to happen and what do you need to go to. I mean, you can follow certain rules, but then it's not only about which rule are you following, it's also how the person on the other side is approaching to the rule. I mean, I heard so many stories about people being in the mercy of Ryanair or whoever airline attendant at the Stansted Airport. Somebody was just thrown off the plane because for some reason, like what? Like a friend of mine was asked, "Who is picking you up in the Trieste airport?" Where she was flying to Slovenia, but Trieste is in Italy, so mom was picking up there. So do you have a written statement from your mother that she's collecting at the airport? And what is the registration of your car? I mean, this is just becoming a complete nonsense in this sense, you know.
But it suggests to me anyway, and I wonder if you would agree, that if you're going to travel to some of this sort of area, you really need to go with a tour operator or a travel agent or somebody who's going to help you.
I mean, the need for somebody to be there to support you is greater than ever. Exactly.
Yeah, okay. And just since you mentioned it, the New Deal Europe Balkans showcase, just briefly explain what that is, because I'm sure people won't be able to.
Well, yeah, it's initiative, a company, a brand that I started with my business partner, Robert D. And it dates back to, I mean, the idea dates back to when I was working for Slovenian Tourism Board, and I always struggled to do a proper workshop for small country as Slovenia, and I always saw a big opportunity in the region, in the Balkan region, and I never saw proper unity in the region because A, it's down to political discrepancies, B, it's just huge region. So we saw opportunity as some people who have great knowledge from the tourism boards to hotels to DMCs to just unite the region and develop this sort of a cluster of things that we do for the region, from events to education, everything. And then we started, we were looking for partners, somebody were more helpful than others, somebody thought we're never going to succeed. Then we finally got a partnership with Jacobs Media, and in the worst possible of times, we developed, during the Corona, we exceeded in developing 2 very successful virtual events, and there is a greater need now in the Balkan region for doing more. They are hungry for somebody to listen to them and to show them to the market. And so it's, I have to say, in the UK and worldwide, the States and everywhere, interest to see, how can we find partners to reach to that area, because we don't want to do a single country. We don't want to do just Bosnia or Moldova, Kosovo, or Serbia. We want somebody to help us to go around. And it's basically, it was something waiting for to happen. And I think we were, as they called us now, the Balkan guys, we were there to support this and to make this happen.
Okay, good luck with that, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that. Tom, so we've talked about the situation as it is now and some of the immediate challenges with restrictions and so on. What factors are going to be most important in shaping the inbound industry, would you say, over the next 6 to 12 months? Is everything going to be dictated by the course of the pandemic and so on, and business recovery, financial recovery, or are people going to be having to look at other factors as well?
Well, I mean, there are obviously other factors. I think the first thing to say is that the course of the pandemic is the dictator which determines what is allowed to happen and what doesn't happen. I think on the assumption, and there's a broad assumption, that things are going to be lifting, whether that's accurate or not, we've already explored. But if it lifts, there will be numerous problems. I think from the UK's point of view, we are coming out of a near total absence of inbound tourism, which has lasted, or will have lasted, nearly 18 months. And that is over 18 months, more like 24 months by the time things get going. I think we've never experienced a delayed recovery like this. If you look back at the past great tourism slumps that we've experienced, like 86, and I'm showing my age here, but 86, 91, 2002, 3, 2007, 8, we've never experienced anything like this. So there's a complete, whilst if you survey my members, they will tell you there is a huge order book. They've got all the people who were supposed to be traveling in 2000, all the people who rescheduled from 2000 to 2001.
2020, you mean?
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
My nostalgia has overtaken my brain. You're quite right. All the people who were supposed to be traveling in 2020 rescheduled, and there's considerable sort of revenge tourism, they say, pent-up demand. I don't know how robust that is. I think a tourism industry relies almost on a conveyor belt of people going to a destination, having a great time, going home, telling everybody what a great time they had, and that generates more demand. And I think it's going to take a while to build up momentum. I salute Italy for its optimism. I speak to someone who's been an optimist for the last 24 months, and I've been incredibly unsuccessful in my optimism. But in reality, you normally expect things to climb out from a recession quite slowly. We've never seen a recession like this. There's also going to be real issues on the supply side. Everybody has mothballed the service economy, and we just don't know what shape the hotels, the restaurants, and the shops are going to be in, particularly in the UK, where there are going to be real challenges. And we know there are real challenges in terms of people having hotels fully staffed up and functioning. So I don't know what the dawn's going to look like. I think it's going to be gradual. It will occur, but I think my members would be very, very happy to see a full recovery by 2023. This is the most optimistic prognosis.
Okay, Susan, same question to you, but on outbound.
Yeah, so on outbound, I mean, we've already talked about the challenges around, getting the red list down, getting the FCDO advice in place in a more strategic way. And I think I mentioned before, companies like long-haul specialists, companies like school travel groups, they've obviously had different challenges to those businesses who have been able to operate, albeit at a reduced level over the summer, to the more short-haul destinations. So for that side of the market, the pandemic will dictate a lot about, whether they are able to open. And then I think some of those things that Tom has talked about, my team obviously deal with the operational side as well, and health and safety and those kind of things. And, you've had a lot of hotels overseas which have been either fully closed or only partly staffed. You've lost a lot of that expertise in the hotel industry. And so again, it's about building up So they may have been focused very much on the health and safety relating to COVID-related matters, but are they still looking at all of the other issues that obviously come up at hotels, which, you know, we've worked over the last many years to build up those standards. So those kind of operational issues we're going to see as well as destinations which have been closed for a long time start to reopen, and obviously tour operators are going to have to engage with that. But I think, I mean, beyond COVID, obviously, you know, we're coming up to COP26. Sustainability was an issue before the pandemic. It is still an issue. You know, sustainable travel is an absolute necessity. We've seen this year all of the climate-related issues that have arisen, and I think as we are starting to come out of the COVID into the more substantive recovery, people who haven't been engaged with that topic are going to need to re-engage with that topic.
Okay, let's come to sustainability in a bit more detail in a second, but just on that, you said hotels have lost expertise. Is that because staff have left and gone into work in other sectors? And if that's the case, are they going to come back, or has a portion of the workforce been lost for good to travel and tourism?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. As I say, particularly in those destinations that have been closed down for a very long time, people have had to look for alternative solutions. So hopefully we will get people back. You know, I'm sure just as in the UK, where the hospitality sector is trying to attract good staff, they will have to do so in destinations. But I think, again, you know, even getting those staff back, you'll have to go through a retraining exercise to make sure that they're back up to speed on all the requirements once they get back into business.
I was talking to a hospitality analyst at the end of last week who felt that hospitality, certainly in the UK, but probably across Europe, has lost staff because of the uncertainty about their futures in the industry, and given the fact that the pandemic hasn't gone away, people are the proportion of the people who've left are looking for more certainty about their working life, and so they won't come back. That was his feeling. Does that gel at all with what you're seeing, Tom, Susan?
I mean, I don't know. I don't have any insider info on that. It certainly sounds, you know, practical. That may well be the case, but I think, you know, travel is such a dynamic industry, hospitality is such a dynamic industry. Those of us that are in the industry, we do love it. It is hard to leave, and many of us are sucked back in when we do try and leave. So, you know, hopefully it's a shorter term issue, and in fact, once things become more settled, as we all hope they will, you will get people back into the industry that perhaps haven't been there.
Did you want to say something on that, Tom?
I was just reflecting that. I mean, I think Susan put it very well. I think I think if you're running a hospitality concern in the UK, you've got some fairly formidable problems confronting you. I think the leading one is Brexit. I mean, they were able to draw on a talent pool of 300 odd million people, and that's shrunk down to 60. And this is a huge withdrawal of a really important resource that you were using. It reflects my point about momentum within the industry. A lot of these people, and notwithstanding what Susan said, and she's entirely correct, it's a very difficult industry to leave. But we also have lots of people who come in part-time, temporarily, especially young people coming to work. And you need young people to work in your industry to go out and tell other young people, this is the place to come and have a job. And if you've cut that off, and we've cut that off emphatically, it's going to be tough to get that momentum going again. So there's a loss of momentum both on the demand and the supply side. Okay.
Tina, can I come to you, and then I'll come to you, Flavio. On the question of sustainability, this is going to just become an increasingly big issue for the industry, isn't it? At this point in time, is the industry broadly doing enough to meet the kind of carbon reduction targets it needs to?
Well, no, of course not. If anything, the situation, the circumstances did enough to help tourism to become more sustainable. Corona stopped us basically and gave us the example what needs to be done. I mean, the problem in sustainability or more better word to say is responsibility. It's responsible travel and sustain. It's not just how we act afterwards, what's the emission we're gonna cut or anything. It's how we develop sustainable, responsible tourism. And it's not just sustainability. It's not just a responsibility. It's not just this fancy word to say, oh, we are green, we don't use plastic. No, it's basically how do you develop. I mean, we can talk, this is one of the key messages that we try to promote in New Deal Europe destinations, because this is the developing part of the world, and you have the most beautiful landscape and the cleanest waters in the world still in the Balkans, which are still pristine as they are, and they are all on a verge to go the wrong way. There could be a big development, big hotel development, and we don't want to do this. I mean, the sustainability and responsibility starts way before we all kind of think that, oh, I'm going to pay a bit more for a greener flight, or we're going to cut the number of plastics and stuff. It's not about this. It's about starting from the beginning, education people, how is possible to develop towards bringing some less numbers of tourism, like not over tourism, spread it and just give something back to the community. It's not just for the nature, it's for the community. Because when you educate somebody in Albania not to throw rubbish on the street anymore, this is what is basically a responsible tourism. It's for the future. So at the moment we're not doing enough, but I hope we will.
Okay, and are the destinations that you're going to be marketing going to be looking to restrict numbers, or restrict numbers on the basis of a higher price, or just not make the mistakes that other destinations around Europe have done? How will you do this?
Well, some of them are entering the game of tourism now at this fairly late stage, and they haven't really heavily got involved into developing the tourism that we know from before, like building huge hotels, being numbers, just pushing for the money. They are more towards things that Connection is doing, so experiences, stories, so developing, staying more close to the nature, traveling in a smaller groups, so developing this kind of more experiential tourism, so the experience thing. So our hope is going to go towards this way, but there is always this fear of capital, just influx, and just offering people like a quick solution with building a huge hotel, selling land and stuff. So this is where it needs to be fought, like convincing governments to develop the right tourism. For example, like Slovenia did, like my country, I think they developed a good example of leading world, like Bohin region, small region that is completely orientated in developing green and sustainable tourism for the future. So this is something that is the right way to do, I think. So
okay.
Spreading the tourism too.
Okay, we could obviously talk about sustainability all afternoon just in its own right. But Flavio, can I come to you? Obviously, Italy's long developed as a destination, and with one of the biggest destinations in the world, probably the biggest destination in the world, Venice, which is introducing its tourism tax. Is that a model we're going to see more of?
Good question. I mean, it's quite controversial because, of course, on one hand, you would allow everyone to it's free. It's a city after all. It's not something private. On the other hand, of course, we have to. I understand their point of view of the Venetians, and you have to limit, and also this really invasion of people and not even spending much money after all. I mean, so there's not even a return there on the investment of all these people. So it's a bit controversial. And, but yeah, perhaps. I mean, what we are doing is try to educate the tourists going. It's been, I don't know, it's 2017, we started 18. There is a mega association of Italian, it's called Borghi d'Italia. It's Italian villages and hamlets. They unite in this association. We are helping them to make it sustainable from a financial, economical point of view. I mean, so get people away from the big cities. This was before COVID, of course, from Venice, and spread and scatter them out throughout Italy. So there are these itineraries of Borghi d'Italia, the Italian villages, which are very, very successful. So this is sustainable from also a financial point of view, so spreading also the income through the smaller places, less known places. And this is working very, very well, used to until COVID with the British and the French. There were really 1/3 of tourists were British doing these itineraries. So not only the environment, but also sustainability from an economical point of view. So we are trying to do that. From an environment, there's a long way still, as Tim said, but hopefully soon we're going to catch up also from the environment, the sustainability.
Okay. Tom, are we going to see more tourism taxes in big destinations?
I think, unfortunately, we may see more tourism taxes. I think it's really important for people like us who spend our life screaming about them. It's really important to recognise cities are perfectly free to do this. I think if they were to introduce them, what they ought to do is actually care about the people that they're imposing these taxes on and care about the industry that sustains it. So rather than just use them as a cash cow that arrive at their gate, give people due notice, make sure that the facilities are there for them, that they're effectively being taxed for. I think at the moment, though, we are at the bottom of a coal mine, being asked to look at what the landscape's going to look like in a few years, in a couple of years' time. And people are talking about build back better, and part of this is the sustainability argument. I think the most important thing at the moment is to build back. Working out how we're going to build back so it's going to be much better in future is almost a secondary question. This is an industry in deep crisis. And they will do anything, and customers will do what they want, but we will do anything we can to survive into next year. And I think that's going to be the number one priority facing everyone in this room. That does not mean to say that there is a huge moral obligation on global society to build a sustainable future, but from a travel industry point of view, we need a travel industry. And that's what we're fighting to survive, we're fighting to create.
Okay, this is going to have to be the final word from each of you, I'm afraid. Susan, survival's the priority before building back better?
I think they both go hand in hand, to be honest. I think absolutely no question that, businesses are focused on their economic survival. Everybody understands that. But I think there is still the opportunity for businesses and for destinations that have been, reset back to a very different level to look at the other businesses and destinations which are already operating in that space and to learn from them. And that's one of ABTA's roles is, we have members who are at very different levels of that journey along sustainability and championing those members that are already doing it well, that can be an example for others. It's part of our role. And similar with destinations, when we speak to destinations, some of them have gone back and looked at their strategic plans and started to look at, for example, community impact. You were talking about over-tourism. How can we get the community now engaged with tourism as a force for good, having had 18 months of not having tourism? What do they want the tourism to look like when it comes back? So I think absolutely no question. At the moment, we are focused on getting outbound travel and inbound travel, back up and running in a more stable form, with less changes, with less of the confusion and, what Tine was referring to about the, nobody actually knows what they need to do to go to destinations. So that absolutely needs to be done. But I think we still need to recognise that we do need to champion those businesses and destinations that are doing sustainable travel well.
Okay. Exactly. Well, COVID has shown us what the world looks like without tourism, hasn't it, for better or worse? Tine, can I put the same question to you? Is the priority to bring visitors to the Balkans or to develop a different sort of tourism?
Well, firstly, just quickly, I will say that travel as a need, as a leisure activity will always survive. We will always have this need to go somewhere, to change our position in the world where we are, and that's considered as travel. The question is if the providers in between will survive and who will survive and who will prevail. And I think there is a future, as it obviously future was for our small event, it's also a future for smaller destinations, or maybe if you want unknown destinations. So yeah, it will survive definitely. It will just be probably different form. It will be more in sort of experience than just this driving machine that we were used before of just point-to-point travel. I think it will be, and an exhibition of a spread sort of experiences around the area. And Balkan is probably the best example, because I believe it will prevail in the future. It's the exact destination that which people will be looking for in near future.
Okay, I'm going to introduce you to Michael O'Leary so you can explain that it's not going to be point to point anymore, it's going to be about an experience. But,
I ought to stress, I mean, ETOA is absolutely committed to building a sustainable future for European tourism. And it's been rewritten into our DNA, but you can't have a sustainable tourism if you don't have a tourism industry. And that's what we've got to build.
You've got to have something to sustain, haven't you? Flavio, final word to you. Is the priority for Italy to bring back travellers or to develop a different model of tourism with travel?
Well, as Susan said, it's both. I mean, we do want, I mean, they have to happen basically nowadays together. Of course, we want the tourists back even more than before, but in a sustainable way, obviously. So we started, as I told you, and hopefully now we learned even more things with COVID, and now that we have to promote Venice, who would have thought before. And,
you have to promote Venice?
No, but
surely not. I don't believe that.
No, but I have to bring people back. I mean, who would have thought that? But before we were trying, it was overcrowded. We were complaining about the opposite. So we want the tourists back, but in a sustainable way, and that's what we are trying to do even before COVID and now. So definitely they have to go together, the two things. Yeah. We tried also. I mean, I also from an environment point of view, I spoke to the airports of Rome, and for instance, now there are high-speed trains from Rome's airport directly from the airport to Florence, Bologna, and Venice. So in 2 hours, for instance, you can be in Bologna from Rome's airport without taking another airplane or flying. So hopefully we are going to a good direction. There's still a lot of long road to go, but definitely sustainability is the most important thing, probably one of the most important in the future for tourism and not only.
Okay, we could have gone on, but we can't. So it's lunch. Please thank Tine, Susan, Tom, and Flavio.